The stars beyond the viewport shimmered like cold fire, a tapestry of distant suns untouched by war, yet. Commander Zalvar stood at ease on the command deck of the Union dreadnought Resolute Claw. Towering over his crew, the Zorvian was the embodiment of engineered dominance. 8 feet of muscle reinforced with bioreactive alloy beneath his scaled skin, he bore the gleaming sigil of the High Command across his chest plate. A veteran of 17 campaigns, he'd crushed insurgencies on acid worlds and culled entire moon colonies without flinching. And yet today, he'd been summoned for something beneath him. A human. He scoffed aloud, the low rasp drawing glances from nearby crewmen. The prisoner had been captured during a skirmish on Arvax 7, a border planet barely worth the gravity it rotated on. Intelligence claimed the human was some sort of elite operative. But to Zalvar, the being confined behind those reinforced walls was nothing more than a soft-shelled anomaly. The door to the interrogation chamber hissed open. Inside, the human sat restrained, wrists bound to the chair with gravitational clamps. He wore a tattered black suit, minimal armor, splattered with grime and dried blood. His eyes, though, those pale gray eyes, met Zalvar's with an unflinching, dispassionate calm. No fear. No desperation. Just calculation. "You're the one they're all whispering about," Zalvar said, his voice a metallic growl. The human said nothing. Zalvar stepped closer, his heavy footfalls echoing. "Lieutenant Jack Reilly. Navy SEAL. Earthborn. No augmentations. No psionic nodes. And yet you held off a full platoon of Marvok infantry. Impressive. But pointless." Still, silence. Jack blinked once, slowly. The commander leaned in, his plated hand brushing against the edge of the chair. "You humans are so very good at dying loud. But you, why so quiet? Trying to intimidate me?" Jack's lip twitched. "I'm trying not to embarrass you." Zalvar paused. Then laughed, a deep, echoing sound that rolled through the chamber like a tremor. Delusion. A common human trait. But amusing. He reached forward, gripping Jack's jaw between armored fingers. "Tell me, primitive. What makes you think you matter in this galaxy?" Jack's reply was a whisper. 3 seconds. Zalvar narrowed his eyes. "What?" Jack's muscles twitched. A tiny, imperceptible shift to anyone untrained in combat nuance. But it was the only warning. The chair exploded into motion. Jack twisted, wrenching himself forward into the commander's midsection. The clamps released not because they were breached, but because Jack had subtly dislocated his own thumbs to slip free. His head drove into Zalvar's throat with vicious precision. The Zorvian staggered, more from shock than pain. 1. Jack dropped low, sweeping Zalvar's leg with the collapsed chair frame, sending the towering alien off balance. 2. In a blur, Jack snatched the commander's sidearm and jammed the muzzle against a seam in his chest plate, directly over an auxiliary nerve cluster. 3. The trigger clicked. Zalvar convulsed as the weapon discharged, not lethal, but enough to cripple a creature built on precision muscle control. He hit the floor hard, claws scraping against the metal, struggling for breath that wouldn't come. Jack stood over him, weapon now trained between his eyes. "I told you not to touch me." The chamber alarms screamed to life. Red strobes bathed the walls. Footsteps thundered from the corridor outside, guards converging. Jack didn't hesitate. He flipped the weapon, disabled the door lock, and vanished into the corridor before the first responder even cleared the threshold. Zalvar writhed, fury and confusion writ large across his alien features. He tried to rise, but his limbs no longer obeyed. The last thing he saw before darkness overtook him was the flicker of a closing door and a voice, calm, steady, and human. "Next time, listen." And then the room fell silent. The corridor pulsed with red light, each alarm wail slicing the air like a blade. Jack Reilly moved with lethal grace, weapon low, boots silent against the metal floor. He counted each step, each breath, every second. The map of the Resolute Claw wasn't burned into his mind, he'd never seen the ship before. But patterns, structure, systems, those spoke a universal language. And Jack spoke it fluently. He ducked into an alcove as a patrol rounded the bend. 3 guards in carapace armor, their rifles humming with charge. They weren't used to hunting. They were used to herding. Jack waited. Listened. One broke off, stepping closer to his position. Too confident. Jack struck like a piston. The alien's weapon was ripped from his hands before he could react. Jack jabbed the muzzle into the soft flesh between neck plates and pulled the trigger once. A blue pulse silenced the guard mid-shriek. The other 2 turned, too slow. Jack dropped low, fired twice. Precision. One shot clipped a knee joint, the second hit center mass. The third guard managed a single syllable before Jack closed the gap and crushed his windpipe with a single, brutal elbow. 3 down. 9 rounds left. He didn't stay to admire the work. He dragged the nearest body into the shadows, used its wrist tag to access a side panel, and slipped into a narrow maintenance conduit. It reeked of coolant and machine oil. Better than blood. Jack moved fast. Faster than the crew could adapt. That was the problem with superiority complexes, they didn't plan for failure. And right now, every second the aliens spent trying to understand how one human had broken free was a second Jack used to rewrite the outcome. Elsewhere on the ship, panic bloomed. Captain Reilly, a pale-skinned Thrixian with too many medals and not enough spine, barked orders from the bridge. How did he get loose? We don't know, Captain, replied a tech officer, flinching beneath her gaze. Commander Zalvar is incapacitated. Bio-readings show nervous disruption. He's alive, but unable to move. What about internal containment? Detainment sectors. Breached. He's already bypassed 3 sectors and neutralized 2 squads. Neutralized. Reilly hissed. Do you mean dead? Correct, Captain. She turned slowly, as if the weight of her failure hadn't quite settled yet. A single unarmed human is carving through this ship. And you're telling me we don't have him locked down? No one answered. No one could. In the vent, Jack paused. He could hear them talking through the panel. High Command was nervous. He smiled. He dropped out into another corridor, now dark, running on emergency power. The main reactor room was 2 decks down. He needed a distraction, something to fracture their coordination even more. A full overload was suicide, but he didn't need to blow the ship. Just make them believe he might. As he moved, his thoughts drifted, not to fear or regret, but to training. Weeks in freezing swamps, blood in his mouth, pain in his bones. SEAL instructors screaming, adapt. Improvise. Dominate. That wasn't just a motto. It was a religion. And he was its most devoted practitioner. Jack slid into the reactor bay unseen. A lone engineer glanced up, puzzled, before Jack struck. The alien's head hit the console with a dull thud, and he slumped. Jack studied the controls. Foreign script. Unfamiliar interfaces. But power grids didn't lie. They pulsed in familiar rhythms. Redundant systems. Emergency failsafes. He bypassed 3 locks and armed the first phase of the meltdown sequence. A klaxon shrieked anew. Different this time. Deeper. More urgent. Bridge officers scrambled. Reactor destabilization detected. His in the engine room. Captain Reilly's skin flushed violet in terror. Shut it down. Now. We can't. His locked us out. The moment fractured the crew's discipline. Voices rose. Orders overlapped. Fear metastasized. For the first time in centuries, the mighty Resolute Claw felt small. Jack used their panic. He slipped out unseen, weapon at the ready. He didn't need to hold the room, he needed them distracted. The fear of death was far more powerful than its reality. And now they feared him. One man. He moved again, heading for the armory. If he could secure heavier gear, he could hold a fallback point until extraction. Assuming Earth had picked up his earlier signal. Assuming Command hadn't written him off. He wouldn't blame them if they had. He paused in the corridor as he passed a cracked viewport. Outside, the stars still shimmered. Cold, detached. He pressed a hand to the glass, just for a moment. Then he moved. Behind him, In the silence, the resolute claw continued to bleed fear into space. And somewhere deep within the bowels of the ship, Commander Zalvar began to stir. Pain came first. Zalvar's eyes opened slowly, the lights above too bright, shapes too sharp. His limbs were sluggish, nerves frayed and burning. The neural shock from the human's weapon had scrambled his motor functions, left him helpless on the cold deck. But Zorvian physiology was resilient. Pain was information. Weakness was temporary. He rose, groaning under the weight of humiliation more than his own body. The guards outside the chamber were gone, dead, judging by the dried traces of blood on the door's threshold. The resolute claw, pride of the Union fleet, was under siege by a single human. And he had failed to stop it. No. Not failed. Underestimated. Zalvar's claws clenched as his pride curdled in his gut. He had mocked the creature, touched him with arrogance. And the human had replied not with words, but with domination. He would correct that mistake. Reilly moved like a ghost through the ship, now armed with a plasma rifle and a stolen visor unit adapted for the ship's layout. The armory breach had provided enough to fight a small war, but he wasn't here to destroy the ship. He was here to make a point. They needed to remember Earth. They needed to remember him. Jack paused in a service hallway as his visor flickered with motion markers. Movement, 12 meters. Big. Familiar gait. He exhaled through his nose. So the commander was awake. He didn't run. He waited. A door peeled open at the far end of the corridor. Zalvar stepped in, towering, seething, but steady. The look in his alien eyes had changed. The arrogance was gone. What remained was older. Hungrier. I made a mistake, Zalvar said. His voice was hoarse, cracked by pain. I took you for prey. Jack said nothing. You crippled me. Made me beg. The commander's jaw flexed. But I am still Zorvian. Jack lowered his weapon a fraction. So fix your mistake. They moved at once. Zalvar surged forward, claws slicing air. Jack slid low beneath the first swipe and fired twice into the joint of the alien's left leg. Sparks. Roar. Zalvar pivoted, caught Jack mid-roll, and slammed him into the wall with a roar that shook the bulkheads. Jack grunted, vision swimming. He jabbed upward, the rifle cracking against Zalvar's jaw, then kicked off the wall, wrenching free. He ducked a hammering fist and dove into a backward roll, narrowly avoiding a fatal strike. Pain bloomed in his ribs. Broken, maybe. He kept moving. Zalvar came again, but slower now, favoring the wounded leg. Jack ducked under the alien's guard, planted a boot on his knee, and launched upward, driving his elbow into the side of Zalvar's head. The commander reeled, dazed. Jack landed, leveled the weapon at Zalvar's chest, and fired. The round hissed. The blast hit. Zalvar fell. Breathing hard, Jack approached slowly, weapon still raised. The commander lay broken, breathing through blood-flecked teeth. His massive frame twitched. Jack crouched beside him. You wanted to know what makes us matter in this galaxy, he said, voice low. It's not our size. Not our tech. It's that when everything breaks, when everything burns, we keep going. Zalvar coughed, laughed weakly. You're monsters. Jack nodded. Sometimes. When we need to be. I surrender, Zalvar whispered. No, Jack replied. You beg. There was silence. Then, soft, guttural, ragged, Zalvar spoke. Please. Mercy. Jack stood and turned away. The strike team would be here in under a minute. Earth had heard his signal. He'd done more than escape. He'd sent a message. Across the galaxy, the story would spread of how one human brought a warship to its knees. Behind him, Zalvar wept quietly, pride shattered. Jack Reilly didn't look back. The Union High Council chamber hovered in silent tension, its translucent dome casting pale light over the gathered delegates. Holographic screens flickered above the central dais, displaying tactical overlays, casualty reports, and, most damning of all, security footage. Frame by frame, it replayed the human's escape aboard the Resolute Claw. The guards he disabled. The systems he hijacked. The commander he humiliated. Councillor Branth, a serpentine elder from the Olea Dominion, hissed through clenched mandibles. He was unaugmented. Not even enhanced. And alone, murmured Vaal Tikor, the crystalline envoy of Hythar Prime. He turned a flagship into a graveyard. At the center, Grand Arbiter Yesek rose. His voice was cold iron. He was not alone. He was human. That is the error we made. The chamber fell into murmured agreement. For centuries, the Council had debated humanity's place among the stars, primitive, violent, unpredictable. But this event had rewritten the equation. Do we retaliate? Someone asked. No, Yesek said. We do not provoke a species capable of breeding men like Jack Reilly. Far away, aboard a covert Earth outpost in orbit above a dead moon, Jack sat alone in the debriefing room. His ribs were wrapped, one eye swollen. He looked like hell. He also looked satisfied. A one-way glass pane separated him from his commanding officers, watching in quiet awe. He took a fleet ship offline, with nothing but grit and improvisation, muttered Colonel Sykes, arms crossed. Not just offline, the analyst beside him added. He compromised their tactical pride. The ship was symbolic. His message was psychological. Sykes nodded. And now they're afraid. On the other side of the glass, Jack ran a hand down his face and exhaled. He hadn't done it for fame. He hadn't done it for revenge. He did it because he was trained to win. Whatever the cost. A soft chime preceded the door opening. General Harlan entered, a folder in hand. He didn't sit. You sent a message, he said without preamble. Jack looked up, one brow raised. The aliens got it, Harlan continued. And so did we. Jack leaned back. So what now? Harlan tossed the folder onto the table. Inside, redacted pages, mission codes, sealed orders. Jack didn't need to open it to understand. This wasn't the end, Harlan said. It was the beginning. Jack smiled faintly. Thought it might be. Beyond Earth's quiet orbit, stars burned on, mute witnesses to the moment a single man reminded the galaxy why humanity was never to be underestimated.